Well, welcome back, guys. It's time for me to review the 6th episode of Star Trek Starfleet Academy, a show that, for me, has become about wondering, what are they going to do to Star Trek this week? Well, the episode opens with a bedroom scene between Caleb and the Betazoid female character, and I'm calling her the Betazoid female character because I keep forgetting her name. I've talked about this. It is an issue with New Trek. There's certain characters' names that just don't go in. So I've already forgotten her name. She's a main character, by the way. So this love scene is a bit too risque for Star Trek and completely unnecessary. And then it gets a bit trippy and telepathic because she's Betazoid and she accidentally gets in his head, projecting something about his childhood and New Spraka, which results in him feeling violated and them having an argument, and she storms out because no one can ever just accept honest apologies. Everyone has to be a hot-tempered, unstable nutcase for arbitrary interpersonal conflict and contrived drama. The USS Athena arrives at an old starship graveyard, which was used for training exercises by the War College. For this training exercise, they're going to be using the derelict vessel, the USS Miyazaki, which once had an experimental singularity drive. They're going to do a crisis response mission. So they have two teams. One team goes aboard the ship, the other provides support on the Athena bridge, and they have a certain amount of time to complete the task. So as a premise for a Star Trek episode, this isn't a bad concept by itself. While Caleb reactivates the ship's life support systems with ease, because Caleb is a total Gary Stu who can do absolutely everything with no difficulty, some aliens beam aboard. They're cannibals, and they take them hostage. Captain Ake is concerned that a frontal assault will result in too many casualties. Well, to be fair, this is Starfleet. Risk is part of the business, Captain. These aliens, the Furies, apparently, the only man with a track record of driving them away is New Spraka, main series villain. Naturally, the idea of asking for his help is absurd, but desperate times and all that. They think he might have some specialized weapon that can drive the Furies away. The cadets manage to escape from the aliens briefly. Their older commanding officer is killed, predictably, and they make it to the bridge where Klingon Gaiden has a moment with his human boyfriend. On the bridge of the Athena, they see the remains of the commanding officer frozen in space, and the young woman who swallowed her comm badge in the first episode is freaking out and crying at the sight of this. They remove her from the bridge, a very wise decision, but in truth, she should actually be kicked out of Starfleet long ago. Her emotional outburst proves she's unsuited for a place in Starfleet. Well, swallowing her comm badge proves she's unsuitable for a lot of jobs, but anyway, you get my point. But given that the new Starfleet cares more about feelings and inclusivity, I'm sure one day she'll probably be captain of a starship. So we have the return of Paul Giamatti as Bracca. And the first thing he says is, and keep in mind, he's an alien, Nala, my space boo, my solar flame, my interstellar bestie. Ha ha ha. Well, the hills are alive with the sound of murder, and I'm just wanked, spanked, and ready to be a diplomat. Ha ha ha. Obviously, there's no attempt with New Trek dialogue to make anyone sound like they actually should. Why is an alien from the 32nd century using 21st century human vernacular and terms? Why did he make a reference to a film, The Sound of Music, an Earth film that came out 1200 years before the events of this story? Why would that make any sense? Why is the dialogue just utterly appalling? Bracca explains that he used to control a region of space in the Taygeta sector, but people no longer have to go near him anymore because the Federation began supplying Taygeta 1 with dilithium, so now people just fly around his region. If they stop supplying this dilithium, he'll help to get rid of the Furies and save the cadets. Admiral Vance says he'll speak to the president about this. I mean, as if the president of the Federation would actually get involved with this kind of dispute. It's a hostage situation with about 5 or 6 cadets, and we're expected to believe that the Federation would discontinue supplying dilithium to a region of space that probably involves millions of people. What? Now, as good an actor as Paul Giamatti is, and he certainly throws himself into the role, the dialogue is just bad in places, and his performance doesn't really suit the show. They're trying too hard to make a memorable Joker-type psycho character, but it's just kind of cringe and irritating. What's more, it's unfathomable that security would leave Ake alone with Braca in her office. It's just ridiculous. He's threatening her aboard her own ship, and she's helpless against him. There's not a single armed security detail in the room. Meantime, on the Miyazaki, the ship's computer is being difficult. It's programmed only to respond to the original crew, and they're all dead. So the cadets have to explain to it that the crew are dead by using a comic book. Comic book stories have been written about the Miyazaki, and so they feed the computer the comic book. Okay, and the character costume designs, for some reason, in this comic book are exactly the same as the original series Star Trek outfits. The ship was from 120 years ago, not 900 years ago. Nothing about this situation is making any sense, and I'm fairly certain no one writing this episode cared all that much about continuity, clearly. Anyway, Ake and Vance agree to Braca's terms, which is ridiculous. But what's more ridiculous is having him explain to them how he defeated the Furies before, and then not simply reneging on their deal and locking him up immediately. He is a criminal. Why would they let him go? Just lie to him, get the intel from him, and then throw him in the brig. Well, of course, that would be logical writing, and that would make sense. Meantime, they send the Betazoid chick into Caleb's mind to give him critical information that he needs. Meantime, on the Athena, they're trying to locate the alien's cloaked ship. A new Intrepid-class starship comes in, one of those Starfleet vessels that has detachable warp nacelles, just like the Athena, because those make sense, of course. How anyone thought they were a good idea when introduced on Discovery is just beyond me. Anyway, Braca was working with the Furies the entire time, and his ship disables the Intrepid-class vessel. The cadets get the Singularity drive online, but the Furies break into the bridge and the Vulcan guy is killed. So, Betazoid chick has to use her magical Betazoid powers to scream the aliens to death. Yes, she screams the aliens to death, and they kind of just explode or something. Because love and emotions can save the day in sci-fi, folks. And remember, we have to once again have a strong female character who is the key to saving the entire universe. A tired, recent sci-fi trope, actually. It's a dreadful ending. Braca manages to attack another space station and kills lots of people, and it's played as a really dark and sorrowful ending. But the problem is, this happens off-screen. Admiral Vance just tells us about it, so we don't have any emotional connection to those unseen dead people. The Federation and Ake just come across as naive and incompetent. At least the terrible humour was kept to a minimum in this episode. Ultimately, it just feels like I watched a stock standard episode of Star Trek Discovery. The good news is, however, there's only 4 episodes of Season 1 left. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on this 6th episode of Star Trek Starfleet Academy. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.